It's the most watchful time of the year. There'll be watches for winding and teeth for grinding and comments to fear. It's the most watchiest time of the year. You're welcome. Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Forster, Editor-in-Chief at Hodinkee, and welcome to episode 10 of Hey Hodinkee. Yes, we're up to episode 10 already. We've got some really great questions for this episode. I think you're going to really enjoy them. One of the most fascinating is the, I think, age-old question probably of whether or not, when you break up, you need to give back a watch that your ex gave you. Stay tuned for all this and more.
Hey Jack, just what are Breguet numerals?
There are actually two types of Arabic numerals. One originated in the western part of the Arab world, and one originated in the eastern part of the Arab world. The ones that originated in the western part of the Arab world are what we today think of as Arabic numerals, and they made their way from Western Arabia to Europe sometime around the 11th or 12th century. The interesting thing about these numerals is that they took on the shape that they took prior to Breguet's actually using them on Breguet watches. So you look at the numbers, and they have this wonderful sort of slanted cursive shape, but that's because they were used in letters and in manuscripts and in scientific correspondence. And this was the natural cursive shape that the letters took when they were written down. And the numbers actually pre-exist Breguet's use of them. He was using what was basically, for him, sort of the normal standard form of Arabic numerals at the time. If you look at Breguet numerals, you can kind of tell that they were derived originally from script. They have this wonderful kind of slanted appearance, beautiful rounded shapes, and they really do look as if they were created as part of the creation of a cursive script. And I think that's part of the charm. You know, you look at Arabic numerals a lot of the time on modern watches, and they look very pragmatic, they look very practical, they look as if they're there only for the purpose of making it easier to read the time. But I think the origin of Breguet numerals in handwritten script gives them a kind of warmth and a kind of almost subliminal connection to emotion that you don't necessarily see in other kinds of numerals.
Hey Hodinkee, I recently broke up with my boyfriend. Good for you. We dated a little over a year. Do I have to give him back the watch he gave me?
Wait. Good for you?
Good for you.
The answer at first blush seems very obvious. Of course you don't have to give back the watch. It was a gift. You don't give back gifts. The truth is, I believe, fundamentally, if somebody gives you a gift, it is a gift. There are a lot of, shall we say, possible mitigating circumstances in terms of what the reason was for the breakup. Is this two people who just realized that it wasn't working out? Did someone do something that they shouldn't have done? I mean, the possibilities are really endless. I can imagine hypothetically situations in which I might do something which would make me feel guilty about not giving back a particularly expensive or particularly meaningful gift. However, by and large, no. A gift is a gift is a gift.
Hey Hodinkee, please help me understand the helium release valve. If I ever have to use it, can a watchmaker fill it up again?
The helium release valve exists for a very specific reason. It is there to keep the crystal of a watch from being blown off by the pressure difference between the inside of the watch and the outside of the watch. Now, this is something that happens pretty much only when you're doing saturation diving. So a saturation diver works at great depth for many days at a stretch, and so they don't have to waste time decompressing every single time that they are done working. They live in a pressurized chamber for the duration of the amount of time that they're going to be working at depth. So what happens if you just go up to the top and pop the hatch is that all of those compressed gases explode. It's a very messy way to go. So what you do is you decompress over a period of days. Your watch has been gradually absorbing helium atoms under high pressure. And as you decompress, because the watch has very strong gaskets, it may happen that the helium inside your watch doesn't have a chance to get out fast enough, and you start to get pressure inside the watch pressing against the inside of the crystal. This will actually blow the crystal off the watch if some steps are not taken to allow the helium to leave the watch. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to a watchmaker and ask them to refill your watch with helium, but if you want to give your favorite independent watchmaker a very pleasant break from the humdrum monotony of their everyday life, go right ahead and do it, because you're going to put a smile on someone's face.
Hey Hodinkee, I was recently looking at the Dalil Muslim automatic, which has, amongst other things, the addition of a compass for prayer. This got me wondering what other uncommon complications you've seen that we may not be aware of. Got any good ones?
Most of the most unusual complications are also the least useful complications in everyday life, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it that would be the case. After all, complication is going to be rarer to the extent that people really don't need it, and also to the extent that it's difficult to make. I think my favorite rare and unusual complications are astronomical complications. The equinoxes and the solstices, respectively, the longest and shortest days of the year. And there are very, very few watches that can actually show the solstices and the equinoxes. They're interesting astronomically, but they're virtually useless sort of in daily life. So watches like Vacheron Constantin, for instance, makes an astronomical complication which shows the equinoxes and the solstices. Very, very expensive. It's part of the Le Cabinotier collection. I think my all-time favorite complication is one that nobody has actually really successfully managed to put in a watch, though. And this is a complication that would show the correct date for Easter every year. Every astronomical phenomenon in the date of Easter is determined by the position of heavenly bodies, because planets and moons and everything move in orbit. Now, the cycle for a leap year, for instance, is 4 years. So while we say that a perpetual calendar is a high complication, it's relatively easy to implement mechanically. The full cycle of Easter dates is 5.7 million years. There's a clock in the cathedral at Strasbourg, which has a computus, a mechanical calculator that calculates the correct date of Easter, which is good for about 10,000 years, but of course we'd like to do better than that. No one so far has ever been able to do it in a wristwatch. It would be an incredibly difficult problem to solve mechanically, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I will be alive and around when someone manages to do it. Well, everybody, it's been another episode of Hey Hodinkee. I've really enjoyed answering your questions. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on MySpace and Zynga.